Alright, so for this one I want to talk about this really awesome thing called Imposter Syndrome. So this is something that a lot of us musicians deal with, including myself. I've definitely have experienced that a lot. Not nearly as much these days as I used to. I definitely have experienced it a lot though. And basically, yeah, it's this feeling like we're not good enough as musicians, or we can't call ourselves a real musician. You know, we think that we're not a legit artist or something. Who am I to do this? Like, I've experienced this with making YouTube videos in the past. Like, who am I to make this YouTube video? Like, who am I to put out a song on Spotify, even though I'm not as good as this guy? Or who am I to consider myself a real musician, even though I'm not making a living as a musician, or something like that? So actually, the reason that I decided to do this video is based on something that a colleague of mine posted, and she basically received a really horrendous comment from a troll. And the general theme seemed to be that this person was trying to make my colleague feel like she wasn't a real musician, and he was using ways to try to convey that by saying that he has a college degree and she probably doesn't, or something like that. And so he was using a college degree to attempt to validate his own success. If you read the comment and you see it at first glance, you might think, that it's very elitist. This person is very elitist, it's very egotistical, it's very snobbish things that he was saying, and that is true. But if you read between the lines, if you actually read into it more deeply, which is what we have to do when we deal with trolls like that, he was actually threatened by my colleague's success. He felt threatened by, probably felt very jealous of her success, and it probably made him feel very uncomfortable about his own mediocrity in his own life. And it made him have to look at his own disappointments and his own insecurities. But instead of looking at it, he chose to try to do everything in his power to attempt to drag her down to his level. In other words, this is not a happy person. So trolls are not happy people. So it just got me thinking about, like, what is a real musician? Like, how can we actually measure our legitimacy as musicians? Like, how do we actually do that? So he was saying things like having a degree, which I actually have a degree in music. I have a bachelor's degree in guitar from Berkeley, and I can tell you right now that you do not need a degree in order to consider yourself a real musician. You just don't. But that's what this guy was saying, and so that means that he probably bases his own worth off of his degree, which is actually really dangerous if you think about it. Not just for him, obviously, for anyone. Like, it's just really dangerous to base our worth off of an external source. That's really dangerous, instead of something that's internal. Because if we base it off of something that's external, that's extremely unstable, and it really speaks to this lack of security within ourselves. So actually, if you think about it, if we had that security within ourselves, we wouldn't actually feel the need to compare ourselves to people and to see ourselves as inferior to someone else. The way that I see it, that is all about comparison. So you compare yourself to someone else who has something that you don't. So if you think about it, it's actually based off of fear. So when we compare ourselves to someone else, it's like we're afraid that we're not good enough. We're afraid of what people might think of us because we don't have this thing. We don't have a degree, or we don't have, we're not making money as a musician yet, or something like that. Or we're not as good as that guy. What will people think of me if I'm not as technically skilled as that other person? Something like that. So it's all based off of fear. So, like, do you think it's a good idea to measure your own success and your own legitimacy based off of fear? So then it's like, what's a better way of measuring our legitimacy as musicians? So how can we actually do that? So this might kind of sound funny, but this is the way that I see it, alright? So think of a bird. So what does a bird do? A bird flies, right? Now think of a fish. What does a fish do? It swims. Now think of a dog. What does a dog do? It walks, alright? Now, is the bird any less of a bird if it doesn't have a college degree? No. The bird flies, and so it is a bird. Is the fish any less of a fish if it doesn't make money as a fish doing what it does? No, of course not. The fish swims, and so it is a fish. It is a real fish. So is the dog any less of a dog if it isn't as technically skilled as the other dogs? It's a real dog. The dog walks, and so it is a real dog. Okay? So if you are a musician watching this and you make music, you are a real musician. That is literally all you need in order to consider yourself a real musician. It's really, really simple, actually. And everything else that we think of is all based on our own insecurities and fear. So do you think it's a better idea to base your own legitimacy off of fear or off of facts? So, of course, we should base it off of facts, because that is the only logical way of doing it. So if you're a musician watching this and you enjoy making music, you have my permission to call yourself a real musician just because you make music. There is no other reason that you need. So just let me know in the comments what your thoughts are on all this stuff. If you can relate, or any advice that you have for other people dealing with imposter syndrome, just let me know. I'm sure that it'll help a lot of other people too. And I'll see you in the next one.